All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're skipping the usual agenda and going straight into the darkest gears of the North Korean machine to grasp the sheer reality of this regime, how it operates on a daily basis, and fascinatingly, how it might actually be beginning to fracture from the inside. Section 1. The Guilt by Association Law, the Foundation of Fear. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the law itself. The guilt by association law is a policy where the political crimes of one person result in the imprisonment and punishment of their entire family. We're talking up to 3 generations. It's literally weaponizing family bonds. Imagine if a mistake your grandfather made put you behind bars today. That's the reality. By doing this, the state maintains absolute terror. If you make a mistake, it's not just you who pays the price, it's your children and your grandchildren. You can really see the horrific human cost of this through the life of a boy named Shin Dong-hyuk. He was actually born in 1981 inside political prison camp 14. Why? Just because his uncle had fled to South Korea. As a kid, he survived on meager corn porridge, catching rats, and honestly eating grass just to stay alive. Then, at age 13, tragically, he was forced to watch the execution of his own mother and brother. It wasn't until he was 23 that he miraculously escaped through an electrified fence, finally made it to South Korea, and shared his story with the rest of the world. Now, what's really wild is the macro shift behind all this, because, North Korea wasn't always a starving nation. Back in 1980, they actually had a higher per capita GDP than India and China, mostly because they were heavily subsidized by the USSR. But then the late 90s hit. The Soviet Union collapsed, and it led to a massive economic crash. We're talking a horrific famine that killed an estimated 500,000 to 2 million people. To survive that sheer catastrophic failure, the government essentially realized, okay, we have to rely on total psychological and physical control to prevent an uprising.
Section 2. Micromanaging Daily Life. The Illusion of Choice.
15. That is the exact number of approved hairstyles for men. And yep, there's another set of 15 for women. You can absolutely forget about walking into a salon and asking your barber for a custom fade. It's just not happening. And crucially, the Supreme Leader's haircut, that is strictly banned for everyone else. Literally no one is allowed to mimic his style. Now, you might be thinking these are just quirky, random rules, but they're not. Think about things like blue, ripped, or skinny jeans, dyed hair, red lipstick, even sun hats. These are all strictly banned, and they're enforced by a literal fashion police who patrol the streets. Why? Well, because the regime classifies these everyday choices as a cultural invasion. They are terrified of Western capitalism and culture, basically believing that if citizens start liking foreign things, their loyalty to the state is going to crumble. And this micromanagement, it bleeds heavily into technology too. The internet as we know it simply does not exist there. Instead, they have a tightly controlled internet. But it gets worse. The operating systems on smartphones literally take random screenshots of citizens' screens. If you go use a computer at a public library, the screen freezes every 5 minutes and you actually need a librarian's fingerprint to keep going. Privacy is, well, it's completely non-existent. Section 3. The Songbang Class System, the Algorithm of Society. So, Songbang is essentially the underlying code of North Korean society. Think of it as this rigid, inescapable social classification system. It dictates a citizen's entire life trajectory based strictly on one thing, their family's political loyalty to the state. It's basically an algorithm designed to reward unquestioning loyalty while completely isolating even the tiniest trace of suspicion. The whole society is fractured into 3 main classes. You've got the core, who are your loyalists, the wavering, who are suspected or, unsure, and the hostile, who are considered flat-out enemies of the state. If you fall into that hostile class, the restrictions are severe. For example, you aren't even allowed within a 50-kilometer radius of Pyongyang, their beautifully window-dressed capital city. And Songbang controls literally everything. Where you live, the quality of your housing, your assigned job and salary, your healthcare access, higher education, and yes, even who you can marry. Now, tie this back to that guilt by association law we just talked about. Because one family member's mistake can demote your entire family's Songbang class. Citizens are forced into this environment of absolute, soul-crushing distrust. You literally can't confide in your own parents or siblings because one single whisper could ruin your entire bloodline. Section 4. Secret Police and Propaganda. The Enforcers of the State. Okay, the number 30 to 40 is absolutely key here. Neighborhoods across the whole country are divided up into groups of 30 to 40 houses, and each group has this association specifically designed to make neighbors, especially those in the hostile classes, spy on one another. The whole system is perfectly rigged so that anyone and everyone is a potential informant against you. And overseeing this massive web of informants is the secret police. But what's truly terrifying about them is how anonymous they are. They operate so deeply in the shadows that back in 2002, when a government telephone book leaked, the contact numbers for secret police officers weren't even in it. They are quite literally an omnipresent ghost in daily life, capable of making anyone disappear without a trace. So what happens when someone vanishes? Well, they fall into a brutal pipeline. It usually starts with a simple accusation. Next thing you know, the entire family is rounded up and sent to a political prison camp. There, they endure 12 to 18 hours of daily forced labor in mines and on farms. And tragically, about 40% of these prisoners die of starvation. Right now, there are an estimated 80,000 to 120,000 people trapped in this modern-day slavery. And that slave labor, it's actively propping up the state's economy and their weapon manufacturing. Hand in hand with all this terror is the propaganda machine. Think about this quote. When you take away God from people, people will find God somewhere else. North Korea is a strictly atheist country. In fact, distributing Bibles is an act punishable by death. Instead, all mandatory worship is directed squarely at the Kim family. Citizens are brainwashed to view their leaders as literally godlike. It goes so far that people have actually been punished for saving their own children from a burning house instead of saving the portraits of the supreme leaders. Section 5. The Silent Market Revolution. The Glitch in the Machine. Okay, here is the twist. Despite 75 years of the seemingly flawless prison design, cracks are actually forming. And it all starts with something called the Jungmadong. These are local black markets that organically popped up during that devastating 1990s famine we mentioned earlier. When the government completely failed to provide food, people had to take survival into their own hands. Fast forward to today, and these markets have evolved into the main source of survival, household income, and incredibly, an underground information network. They're effectively bypassing the state's total economic control. Now, the gender dynamics emerging from this are just fascinating. See, the men are still tied to forced government jobs that pay pre-1990s wages, which, to put it in perspective, is barely enough to buy 7 to 9 kilograms of corn a month. But married women, they aren't forced into those state jobs, so they've stepped up to run these black markets. They are now bringing in over 70% of the total household income. Basically, women have become the primary breadwinners and, quite accidentally, the leaders of this silent revolution. So what exactly is getting traded in these markets? Well, get this. A massive 81% of defectors who recently left the country had access to USB sticks that they bought in these very Jungmadong markets. And it gets better. Of those people with USBs, a staggering 98% were carrying illegal foreign media. We're talking smuggled South Korean dramas, foreign movies. By sneaking home and watching these, everyday citizens are finally being exposed to the truth of the outside world. It's completely shattering the state's illusion that they live in some sort of superior utopia. Of course, this underground economy has accidentally normalized something else: corruption. Widespread bribery is actually breaking down the regime's absolute fear mechanism. Nowadays, citizens have to bribe officials for practically everything, whether it's getting their kids into better schools or just avoiding punishment for watching those illegal movies. Because corruption is just a way of life now, people aren't paralyzed by fear anymore. Not if they know they have the market money to simply pay off a government official. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. As these illegal USBs and women-led black markets start building a new, hidden foundation of trust among the citizens, will this silent revolution eventually shatter the perfect prison? History shows us time and time again that dictatorships usually sow the seeds of their own destruction. The flow of information is becoming unstoppable, leaving us all to wonder, just how long can this fragile, terrifying machine